Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Tim Hart, branch manager of Van Dyke Mortgage here in Fort Myers. Welcome to an episode of the HartBeat Show podcast. If you're in Southwest Florida, man, you go through hurricanes, you know who this guy is. Today, I'm stoked. We got Mike from Mike's Weather Page. Mike, how you doing, buddy?
Good, man. Thanks for having me, Tim.
Yeah, and this is no stress, dude. You're not even talking about weather or anything. It's just
I just rolled in from a long night of softball. I haven't scripted anything. I just sat right down. Emily's let the dogs out, and so here I am, man. I'm ready to rock and roll.
Oh, sweet. Well, hey, guys, before we get into Mike, what you do, because this is what it's all going to be about. We're going to learn about how Mike started, how the site's doing, a lot of different things like that with the weather. But before we do, man, I want to make sure I extend my thanks and gratitude to you and your family for the time that you spend on providing us with information. You become such a reliable source during these hurricanes. And I know a lot of my friends out here who are going to watch this, they're fans of you too. And we go right to you for this information. So I want to tell you, thank you for everything you do.
Well, you're welcome. And I'm always very humbled. The site's growing. Sometimes I pinch myself to think how it's grown, but it means a lot. And really, it's really, sometimes it gets to me a little bit because of the amount of people that follow. But I love it. I mean, it's like we're one big happy family. And the last few years, the site's gotten bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and we're just all like one big happy weather crazy family. So, but yeah, you're welcome. Everybody watching, if you're fans, I really appreciate it. Looking forward to wrapping up this season and 2020, and we'll be here before you know it. Another season of hurricanes.
Your job's never done with the weather. But for anyone watching, we're here in Southwest Florida. Fort Myers, Cape Coral, Naples, area, and you're based out of like the Tampa area up there, right?
Yep, Oldsmar, Florida, Tampa Bay, St. Petersburg, home of the Rays, big Rays
Gotcha.
fan.
Well,
World Series is going on right now. I guess I'm kind of cheering for Houston.
Yeah. I used to be an Astros fan back in the day with Biggio and Bagwell and all those guys, but I hope the Astros win too. So we'll see. But enough about baseball, Mike. Let's get into you, buddy. So before we get into that as well, let's make sure your two things we want to talk about, your Facebook page, right? Mike's Weather Page.
Yeah, Mike's Weather Page.
And your website.
And the website. The website's always was the main, the whole reasoning of how this all began was the website. I'll tell you, the quick story, if you never heard, back in 2004, living in Florida, we had Charlie and, Gene, Francis, right? I think we had, and then Ivan, but there was no information on the internet, and I was just getting out of college and learned an HTML class, and the same reasoning of what I do today, I did in 2004, and that was to make, Mike's Weather Page, to have all the links that I always look for, that drove me crazy looking for spaghetti models and stuff. And I'm like, oh, this is screwed. I'm gonna put it all on a web page, and so basically every link that I look for is on one page, and there's a billion links on there, but I look at every one of those links, and to this day I must add a new link every hurricane season. I update it every couple of hours sometimes, but it's always been a one-stop shop for the tropics. That's what Jim Cantori calls it, and yeah, I'm proud of it. I love it. It's kind of my hobby, the page, and it's crazy to think that millions of people go to it. Millions. To the fact that I actually had to pay a lot of money with GoDaddy to have my own server due to the amount of traffic that we got. But knock on wood, we've made it the last couple of hurricane seasons without a shutdown. Because one year, I don't remember what hurricane it was, but I was being hosted by Yahoo, and our first real hurricane came, and they locked me out for fraudulent. They thought they were under attack. So they locked my account for 24 hours because of the amount of traffic. And nobody at Yahoo knew about, it's some safety device. It'll reset. I'm like, no, you don't understand. I got a hurricane. I can't have this thing offline. So that was scary one year. I fixed it. I actually made a backup domain, Mike's Weather Page. And so I was able to get through that, 24 hours of stress. And, now it's it's pretty cool to think that it's been that many years, and it still kind of looks the same as it did in '04. Just has a lot more color.
Yeah, so you started in '04, and I mean, like I was checking out your Facebook page earlier, 780,000.
That's crazy,
right?
Yeah, it's and I guess I have more followers. They say, I don't know. I got more followers and likes, and I guess that's rare in the Facebook world. So that's pretty cool. I mean, it grows steadily, and very rarely we get anybody causing trouble, which I guess this is one thing that blows me away is to have that many people, and not really. I can count maybe on one hand how many people over the years I've had to ban for just being trolls or whatever. So
right.
It's a great community. I'm addicted to it. I read it all the time. Made a lot of friends through there, and it's become half of the whole gig. I mean, the website's the main juice everybody goes to, and but the Facebook, a lot of people rely on that now just as much as the webpage. It's become just as important as the webpage.
Yeah, well, anytime we have a hurricane, we're anywhere near the cone, and I'm tuning in. If I'm not tuning into your live, I'm definitely waiting for your hurricane update. Where you post that photo of the track. Like that's, and then your insight on it, because truthfully, I don't trust weathermen, and dude, that's why I think I don't mean to speak for you, but I mean, is that one of the keys to your success?
Well, I don't know if it's. I think a lot of it has to do with I'm able to spend a lot of time on it. A lot more than most weathermen. I mean, they get 3 minutes on air, and they have to be careful. They can't scare people. So I've been able to put a lot more data, I guess, out, and people love information. They love what ifs, and I think that's just been the key. I don't know. And we keep it fun. Over the years, I've tried to add a little humor here and there, and I'm definitely not scripted. So it's.
When you got a song too now, right?
Oh, we have a dude. His name's Andy Simmons. He's got 4 songs on YouTube now that he wrote for our page. It's crazy. So it's crazy. Like every day we had something. We had a beer. I don't know if you heard about it, but a local brewery, Trouble Waters Brewery, actually brewed a Drunk Donkey beer, and we had a big beer party last Thursday, and a couple hundred people came out, and it was a big deal. I mean, we did a Facebook Live from there, and met a lot of fans. And Koozie sponsored me now, and they've sent 1,000 koozies, so I hand those out to people, and it's crazy. It's
and you got ABC Liquor. Right?
Oh my God, ABC, yeah, Fine Wine and Spirits. Florida based. They approached me after Irma. You mentioned you started following me. It seemed like Irma kickstarted. I mean, I've always been here doing what I'm doing. I haven't changed, I hope. But Irma obviously kickstarted the site. Matthew was the year before, because Matthew got really close to us. But Irma obviously got a lot of fans, and the ABC folks started watching, and they just wanted to help a little bit, and they said, don't change, do whatever you want. Cuss, piss people off, and what kind of, and they sell alcohol. You can't go wrong.
Yeah, my buddy John Conway, he's the charter captain here. He wanted me to ask you if you get any discounts at ABC.
They've hooked me up with some stuff. Oh yeah, they've left me care packages, and they and I'm hoping this beer thing next year. We're hoping it gets into the brewery. Can distribute it, and I'd like it to be like the unofficial official beer of hurricane season. That's kind of my.
That's
cool.
Awesome, man.
It'd be cool, yeah.
Now, but this is not your full-time gig, right? This is a.
No, I've always been in websites, and I've done a little. I still work for a third party that does website work that's contracted out to search engines. So I do some work at home, which is fun, and started doing a lot more at-home work once the kids went to left, like, because working at home, both kids were here with me all the time. Well, I was found when they were 3 years old, and one of them went off to preschool, and then the other one went off to preschool. I'm sitting here at home like, oh my God, what do I do? I'm like, I'm used to having kids for 6 years, and so I started doing more at-home work, and I've always liked HTML and websites. So yeah, it's and I got a marketing background with the USF. Got a bachelor in marketing. Always was in love with Super Bowl ads. I joke about that on my Facebook lives, but definitely the marketing, I think, has helped me a little bit with this. But I got a marketing mind. I love that kind of stuff. And it's all tied together. My wife's been at Publix for over 30 years. So she has a real job so that she goes off to work, and I get to sit in my little cubby hole and do what I love to do. I mean, it's like my little happy place. I mean, it's crazy. I enjoy it. I really do.
Well, I mean, what's that saying? Like, you never work a day in your life if you do what you love, right?
Well, yeah. And
you're on your way.
Well, it is fun. I mean, I'm addicted. I love waking up in the, 2 a.m, checking out the latest Euro. First thing I do in the morning when I wake up, still today, I turn on I look at my phone, make sure there's nothing. We've been having a lot of tornadoes down here, as you know, living down there, Cape Coral, right?
Just a week ago. Yeah.
A week ago. That was terrible. And they're getting them right now in the Panhandle. So I'm always tracking weather. And through the winter months now, I've gained a new audience. So there's always weather, and I love it. I don't know where it's going to go. I'm trying to get my 13-year-old involved with social media marketing because it's gotten so big, and I'm thinking down the road maybe she could get more involved with the social media side. And I'm on Twitter now, and I got people wanting me to do Instagram, and I'm like, holy man, it wears me out. Trust me, I get emotionally drained sometimes, and I just have to crash. Dorian wore me out.
Not to give you advice here, but like what you do on Facebook, man, like that's how we found you. Was you mentioned Irma. When Irma was coming, I had a guy that told me, he goes, man, go to Mike's weather page. That's the dude. And that was from a couple captains here in Southwest Florida, that rely on weather. But that's where, you're 700-something thousand people right now. And as soon as more storms come through next year, because they're gonna, right, in Florida somewhere.
Oh, right.
And you're gonna grow again.
I'm happy. I mean, I will admit. I mean, I love every storm. When I first started doing this, it was only Florida, and I forgot that there were storms in Carolina and Texas, and so I branched out. And then a couple of years ago, I was getting some flack because I never talked about the Caribbean. Well, I've since learned about the Caribbean. Now I have friends, and I call them friends, but Facebook people that chime in all the time. They live down in St. Martin and down in the Lesser Antilles, and now even the Azores. There's a new storm, Rebecca, and we actually have people chiming in from the Azores. And we had a storm hit Ireland a few months back, and I had so it's really taught me to. We have a worldwide audience, and that only makes me more addicted to this because I know people are watching, and it's cool. I'm very humble. Like I said, I'm very humbled. I never make a claim that I'm a professional, and we always resort back to NHC. I will brag a little.
You're awesome at that, man. You say that a lot during your videos. Is like, look, this is my opinion. Don't
right.
And I think to them.
And I think people ultimately like to make their own decisions. That was the whole thing about spaghetti models is everybody wants to know, oh my God, there's a chance. If you get a little spaghetti model line over your house, I mean, admit it, everybody's adrenaline goes up. You get a little excited. I mean, nobody wants a hurricane. Nobody wants the, devastation. But there is this weirdness about people get excited about tropics. And it just piques your adrenaline. It always did mine. And, so you always have that what if factor. And I think that's what people, and laying out all the models and giving everybody, and I usually only will put out thoughts when I believe in them. And I will say, at least I don't go out on whims, say, oh, look at this. I'll wait and make sure I have confidence. And I mean, so far I haven't really been bit too bad with, bogus, predictions or scaring people. So I even like Imelda a few months back went into Texas. I was showing some pretty high rain totals and was getting called out on it. Ultimately, it was a pretty serious storm for Texas. And even with Dorian, I had a lot of hate mail because I was not hyping it up, but the simple facts of a system, passing Hispaniola and not getting that warm Bahama water, it was kind of a little common sense, and B, the conditions were showing, hey, we're going to have a storm. So, people were saying, oh, you're hyping. Well, obviously the worst case scenario happened for those folks. So, I'm usually careful. And my dad, he's 81. he's great, and he always humbles me. He's like, "Mike, you don't ever say anything that you know, get you in trouble." And I'm like, "No, Dad, no. I've always, you know, made sure to." But yeah, you know, and I've been fortunate with local Mets here in the Tampa Bay area, like Dennis Phillips, Paul Delgado now, and Mike Clay have all been supporters of the site and me, and they said positive things. So it's cool. I mean, the Hurricane hunters have chimed in that they follow the page, and so I feel like at least I have an army of people out there that they know I'm an amateur, but at least if I still have some support on the professional side.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. That's very interesting. So, like professional meteorologists, do you call them Mets? Is that what you called them?
Yeah, I think that's what you call them.
I don't know. I
Mets.
I like Mets. Mets is cool. But the Mets, I'm doing my air quotes.
Yeah.
So how you mentioned a few of the people in the local area. Like, is this where drunk donkeys came from? Is that what
totally?
happened?
Oh, totally. Because it was Hurricane Florence. And you know, Florence was a Category 4 hurricane heading toward the Carolinas, and there was a lot of panic. And I was showing models that were showing a dip south, and of course, one of them was a Euro, and I guess one of them went viral on Facebook enough that you know, meteorologists were getting questions like, you know, what the heck's this? And of course, their forecast was a little bit weaker than what I was showing, because you know, it was like not a worst case run, but it was like, hey, this is a real possibility here. So I got called out, like some dude, Mike, down in Florida, and that's where the whole drunk donkey thing came. And you know, any drunk donkey can show a Euro, and you know, in their defense, I don't think they realized the size of our page, because what happened then is, holy cow, like all our fans just went over and just like it turned into like a war, and it was crazy. And there was people writing newspaper articles about it, and you know, and I was taking it, I was loving it. I went over there and said, hey, this is great. Listen, I'm cool with it. You know, any press is good press.
Amen.
Never offended me at all. But that's how it started.
Look at your brand, man. You got the drunk Donkey IPA. You got shirts out. That guy's going to collect royalties from you one day. You better watch it.
Well, yeah. Hopefully, you know, they've laugh about it too. But yeah, it's cool. I mean, you roll with it. That's my marketing. You know, now we got, you know, every season, which I don't know. Well, every day you just never know what tomorrow will bring. You know, I was joking. Next big hurricane, somebody called me a name on TV, so I could sell some shirts.
But so are you like the meteorologist center? Are they cool with you? Or a majority of them, or were they like slow in the beginning, like accepting you?
I think. I mean, I have very little resistance, and I don't know what it is. I think they all know, because it's Mike's weather page, you know, and there's a lot of websites out there that claim they have that official sound to them. And at one time I wanted to be like, you know, Florida Hurricane Center or something.
Right.
So it's very innocent, you know, what I'm coming across. So I don't think anybody feels like I'm trying to, you know, replace the National Hurricane Center. So that's good.
That's a good point. I get that.
Yeah, no, and there's some, you know, and they're scared about it, and that's where I'm kind of going with it. I know that there's been publications, and they always warn people, you know, stay away from social meteorologists, and some people think they're you know, picking me out, but there's a lot of websites doing this, and they'll show model runs, and it gets everybody in an uproar. So they have a very it's rough on them, because they don't have more than 3 or 4 minutes on TV, and they're always dealing with people like what I'm doing that are spreading stuff online that gets people worked up. So I haven't done that enough, I think, to where they, you know, they feel threatened. But I've had some great people. I mean, I was looking at the site earlier today, just going through some links, but like Sam Champion is a Weather Channel Met. Now he works up in New York, but he's always using the site and giving me props. And like I said, Stephanie Abrams propped me a bunch of times, and Cantori. So it's really cool.
Cantori's watch you? Oh
yeah, he's a fan, and he's wrote many times that, you know, he loves the site, and he's the one that named it the one stop for tropics, or you know what I'm saying. I haven't even been drinking yet here. What's the phrase? Your one-stop shop. Oh, your one-stop shop. That's what he calls it. That's a tongue twister.
One-stop shop.
One-stop shop.
He needs to come on the podcast and we'll talk about it, Jim Cantori.
Yeah, well, but they got to be careful now because they're looking for ratings, and I think the only thing I'm scared about now is the size of the page. I did get in trouble during Dorian. I uploaded a video from a storm chaser, stuff I've always done, showing things. Well, it looked like I was stealing content, which I wasn't. We've become friends, me and the storm chaser. But now I've learned that because of my size, I have to be a little more careful with stuff like that.
Yeah, you're not flying under the radar.
No, there's always the haters out there. That's I got to just be careful about. So, but so far, hey, so good. I'm very pleased. Like I said, the local meteorologists give me props, show the page. So I'm just kind of low, staying low.
I like it. What are some of the I'd be curious because these Facebook Lives you do and all the traffic you get, and I'm mainly going to concentrate on Facebook because I think that's where a lot of cool action happens, the interact with your fans and stuff. But like, what are some of your highlights as that page has grown, or anything stand out for you?
Yeah, one of the mayors, I think it was Lynn Haven. God, I can't remember. Something just happened with the World Series.
Astros up or down? What's happening?
I don't know. I guess I can look. You don't want to spoil it for anybody, do you? Yes.
This come out. This be.
They're ahead 2-0.
Yeah, it'll be way over.
So yeah, Lynn Haven. Okay, yeah, okay. So the mayor of Lynn Haven last year gave me some props out of the blue. I've shared something, and lo and behold, Lynn Haven was just really close to Panama, and they got hit hard by Hurricane Michael. And the mayor came on the page and gave the page a lot of props, and so that had the most up to date and important information leading up to the storm, and that kind of blew me away. Just you have a government official of a city that was affected by the hurricane giving the page props, so that gives you goosebumps. Just the last storm here with Dorian, the mayor of St. Pete put a prop out that he uses the page. So those are the things that really build credibility and make me feel like, hey, I'm doing something good for the community. I feel like, I stream hours. Sometimes I'm like, what am I doing here? But when I hear stories like that, and then of course I get stories of people that say that they listened and evacuated and, leave me some really touching stories that to the extreme of, you saved our lives, but I don't go to that far, but some people believe it. And that if they believe it, it's cool. So, I guess those are the stories like that really hit home, to know that people are actually watching and listening. They might not always chime in, but it's just, it's a quiet eyeballs out there that are paying attention, and that's the coolest thing.
Yeah, it sounds like you really value the service you're given. Like the service you're given to people that just face it, man. In Florida or wherever you're at, these hurricanes are coming at you. Like, you could be in harm's way, and we need that information from somebody, and you're that trusted source.
And I don't know, maybe it's just because I'm one of you. That's what I like to say. People like to drink beer,
Right.
I posted the other night, I post crazy stuff, but like, I had a couple hundred responses, but I'm like, how many people fall asleep at Netflix and then the next night, you spend the next 20 minutes trying to find out where you fell asleep at, and then you fall asleep again, or, I'm always posting crap like that.
Yeah. 'Cause it keeps playing.
Well, yeah. And then you spend the next, but I just, I don't know how I do it. I just randomly post, and then everybody relates. And it just, I just think that's the coolness of it, is that, I just try to be me, and I promote the family a lot. And our dog has become internet famous, Louie. Right. So, it's just like we're one big happy community, and it's cool.
Well, but I think also, you mentioned about me when I kind of was half joking about why are meteorologists always wrong, but you said they only have a few minutes. And so like, you have a long form, to sit there and go in detail, instead of giving these little sound bites that, us as consumers have to take. And so,
right.
I think that's a really, and plus you are a, likable guy. You give great information. You're on the money for it.
Well, yeah, and I think, putting out a lot of data, and I know the NHC has always been really like slow knee-jerk reaction with their updates and advisories. And I go, I look at the same model. Everybody looks at the same models. That's one thing. Nobody's got a secret computer that they're looking at. Everybody's got access now to the same models. So it's just all how you interpret them and how you present them. And I'm looking a lot of times the same thing the NHC is looking at. Sometimes I put it out there earlier and people like that. They just have to be careful. They can't obviously put stuff out there and be wrong, and then they get a lot of heat for it. I mean, this like last weekend, when the storm was going up in the Gulf and Florida was, had that big ball of convection, and we ended up with tornadoes, and there was no tornado watch. Lakeland had an EF2 tornado. Even last week's storm up through the Panhandle in New Orleans, they had a lot of wind, and the National Weather Service had to actually apologize that they underestimated the storm because there was so they're damned if you do and damned if you don't. I mean, they can't win sometimes,
Yeah, right. Why'd you freak everyone out? And the other side of it is like, why didn't you tell everybody?
Yeah, and they're always second guessing it. I mean, what was the last week's storm, by the way? That was hell, I can't even remember. It was we had Rebecca, Olga. Olga's the one. Olga was the one that it was briefly a storm, and then they never issued any watches or warnings because it was going to get absorbed by a cold front. And I find the NHC does this a lot because it didn't meet the scientific classification of a tropical storm. They basically said, hey, it's not our problem. Get your advisories from your local weather service. Well, because you saw a tropical storm heading up to the coast, but there was no watches or warnings, a lot of people told me that they actually didn't take it serious. And they ultimately had, a couple 100,000 people without power. They had 70-mile-an-hour winds all the way up through, way north of New Orleans. So that was a big story for them. They said a lot of them said they had worse wind than they've had in the last 10 years with storms. So, everybody's and I think that's another reason I think people like it is because not everybody's right all the time. And whether the joke is you can be right half the time, so nobody's, when you see the NHC making, mistakes, nobody's perfect. The weather does totally unexpected. And I think that's what people love is you can't predict Mother Nature. And that's what everybody just loves about it. Because as much as people think they know about weather, every year it seems like there's more storms throwing us for loops than there. I don't know what it is, but every year there's a couple systems that just make no sense. And, I think that's why people just like watching all the variables, maybe all the possibilities.
Yeah. Well, what do you think the most, reliable model is? Do you have one?
99 times out of 10, the Euro. I mean, the European model. Yeah, that's the ECMWF as initials, but it's been the most stable model over the years. And what I usually do, I mean, you got the GFS and American. That's the American model, the GFS, and they keep changing it every year. And it's still not as good as the Euro, but you got the Canadian model, the CMC. Also, it's called the GEM. Same thing. The UK, the Brits got a great model. So you take a blend of all these models usually, and the key really is there's no secret to it, but when you start seeing model trends and consistency, then that's when it becomes a reality. What we saw with Irma, the Euro was actually early on was incorrect. The Euro had it going up the East Coast, and that's why we had those massive evacuations in Miami and Fort Lauderdale.
Right.
GFS actually got it right and had it turn later. So there's always times that one's going to be right and one's going to be wrong. I mean, that's why you kind of have to go in the middle. And one thing, if you ever read the NHC discussions, they always quote the models. It cracks me up because some people get on people like me for posting individual runs like the H-War for some of these other oddball models. But if we have an oddball model show something, the Hurricane Center will actually say, well, the reason our cone's wide is because the H-War is over here, GFS over here, so we're down the middle. And that's usually 99% of the time. They actually justify their decision on a cone based on these models. So they're using the models like everybody else. And, then they just throw their hands in the air and just You watch, wait, and see, like I always say, because they change. Models change. That's what Irma did. I mean, it caught everybody off guard and ended up going on the West Coast.
Yeah. Well, speaking of Irma, so like I've been hearing, especially after this year, it's called hurricane fatigue now. Have you heard of that?
What is that? No.
Like basically, like back in the day, it was like 3 days out. Maybe you're like, oh,
yeah,
here's a hurricane. But now, like we all know, like 10 days out, hey, this hurricane may be coming. It's huge, and so then we all sit there and wait and plan and stress out and.
Oh yeah, and
kind of like cry wolf, whatever.
Yeah, you're kind of like a cry wolf. I mean, I guess same thing you're saying. It's
no, not like worried about people saying that it's not going to hit us, but like the stress of
the build up,
of preparing and the build up to it. Yeah, and then so like they said people were fatigued after it.
Okay, well, totally, yeah, well, exhausted, and that's what I was telling you before we went live. But I mean, like watching Dorian, for example, that just flat wore everybody out. I mean, it was a 2-week ordeal,
right?
And because you have these models and stuff, and people, and they come out with a new model every few hours, it can drive you crazy. Yeah, you're right. It absolutely, the public can get completely overwhelmed, I think, with the changing runs, because you're gonna, I always make a big point that you get flip-flopping and windshield wiper effects. These models change, so too many people get wrapped up in one run, and then all of a sudden it shifts to another run, then it comes back. So people the highs and lows are real, and what we see now, the one stat that came out this year with Category 5 hurricanes is 3 days out of all of our landfalling Category 5 hurricanes were only tropical storms 3 days out. So this massive intensification happens quick. And what happened with Florence last year, I always said the media covered Florence way long because it was out in coming off Africa. So they had 10 days to track this thing. And that's what fatigues people, because you have 10 days of this thing coming across the Atlantic and end up being a Category 1. It ended up being a big flood issue. But yeah, 10 days out. And then you got like a storm like Michael that everybody says that they blamed the coverage was because, one, I've always joked about fall in football. It seems like once October rolls around, nobody wants to talk about hurricanes. Like all the big hurricane coverage and tropical updates all disappear because everybody wants to talk about fall colors and football. Well, Michael came around. It was a tropical storm down by the Yucatan, and 3 days later, it hit Michael Panama City area as a Category 5. So less than 3 days, basically, this thing. So those people didn't have enough time for that fatigue. So yeah, I could definitely see your point. I mean, people get totally. I feel that on my site. You can almost feel a pulse of what people are going through, and I've noticed these long. They call them Cape Verde systems that actually they come off spinning off of Africa. They already have vorticity, and they splash down the Atlantic, and they'll track. It takes 10 days to come across the Atlantic, and we've had that. And Irma was that kind of a system. It came across, and it wears people out. You get one of these a season, it seems like, and everybody's just done.
Yeah. Well, that leads me to something else. So, do you think, because climate change is all a big thing in the news, and so do you think that hurricanes are stronger than they ever have been than the past, or do you want to touch on that at all?
Well, the only thing that I don't think you can deny facts is things are getting hotter, and the waters are getting hotter. And what we're seeing, like this year, like even right now, we just had a Rebecca form. The Azores have had 3 systems now, and the storm before Rebecca, that was the one. I got to go back to my names here, but it was the highest forming storm on record. That was Pablo, and so we're seeing storms forming, I think, farther into the Atlantic in farther north. So that's a phenomenon that I'm noticing, and a lot of that's because the Atlantic's getting a little hotter. Whether that's climate change or what, I don't know, but I do know, like they just reported today, October is going to be the hottest month ever on record for Florida. It's hot. Things are hot. These storms have a chance to blow up. So as far as strengths, I mean, you had Camille in the 60s. Not sure quite yet if we're going to see stronger storms. Andrew was in 92. So I just think the frequency of them might be a little bit more and a little bit farther into the Atlantic and a little deeper in the season. The season's supposed to, peak September 12th, but we might see maybe over time the season get a little deeper because the waters are staying hotter.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the change I think we might just see as the season starts a little, always starts in May. It seems like we always get systems, and it's going to run a little deeper because it's basically based on heat. If the water's temperature is hot enough, there's a lot of other variables. Like early in the season, we had a lot of Caribbean shear that was kind of created by El Nino and stuff like that. So even though the water's hot, you might have other factors limiting. Like we had a large outbreaks of SAL this year, the Saharan air layers, the dust that comes off Africa, and that was in the news a lot. But it seemed like we had a higher concentration of dust this year earlier in the season, and those choke hurricanes.
Yeah, that knocks them down, right?
Yeah, well, basically, I mean, there's satellite footage now from the GOES 16 satellite that shows you the dust in the middle atmosphere. And it does two things. One, it actually blocks the sun going to the Atlantic. Last year, that was what everybody talked about, was the Atlantic was cooler at the start of the season. That was a lot of the dust. And the other thing it does is it dries up the atmosphere like dry air and dust does. And if you don't have a moist middle atmosphere, and any of my fans watching are going to laugh because we say moist and everybody jokes.
It's so weird. It grosses people out.
Oh, moist. And then I guess people made a bingo board and they played bingo during Dorian, and in certain words I would say they played bingo.
What's the popular ones? You got moist. What else?
Oh my God. There was ones like dogs barking, or I talk about the rays, or I say, just things I've said over time, and people figured me out. That's scary.
It's your community, man. They love you. That's awesome.
But yeah. So we'll see. I mean, the last couple of years we've had some big storms. I don't know. I mean, we had, well, guess time will tell.
So at least we do another question though. So I'm curious, what is Mike's doomsday weather scenario? Like, do you have that?
Yeah,
oh
yeah. Well, I had one.
If this happens, we're done.
Well, yeah, not because I live in Tampa, but there's maps that you can research. NOAA puts out. They're called slosh maps, and they're worst case scenarios based on surge. And I've shown it a lot on my site. But when we had Irma sucked the water out of the bay. And that was all over the news. I mean, all the way down to the Bahamas, all the rotating water pushed and basically blew all the water out of the West Coast back into the Gulf. So the worst case scenario for where I live is they basically say Pinellas County could be an island. And the same thing could hold true for you guys in Fort Myers. And I have to look at the slosh maps. But if you get a system just north of Fort Myers, or you get a system just north of Tampa Bay, you're going to have this counterclockwise flow of water just get pushed right up into the bays. And I know Fort Myers has got the same type of bay set up with the river. So that's the water is everything. I mean, the water, 90%, around 90%, 88, 92%, I don't know, but most of your hurricane deaths are water related. That's either freshwater flooding, surge, surf. So the water is huge. That's the story that you get with hurricanes. So my worst case would be a category 4 or 5 hurricane just north of Tampa Bay. And we would see flooding like people have never seen, and evacuations. Pinellas County's got over 1 million people. So yeah, it'd be a nightmare. Katrina pretty much experienced it on a different setup because of their lower, sea level. But we Fort Myers. I mean, I'm gonna find it because I guarantee Fort Myers has the same slosh map as Tampa Bay does. Well,
I remember when Hurricane Donna came through. I don't remember. I wasn't alive, but like my grandma and my granddaddy, dude, we were born and raised in Southwest Florida. They homesteaded here in the 1900s, and they talked about Donna like, it was the most amazing event ever. It sucked out all the water from the Caloosahatchee, and they talked about people walking across it and like crazy.
Same thing. Yeah, so it came through the South. I think Donna probably came to the South and did the same weird phenomenon. It blows the water out.
Yeah, it didn't push it all in, it just sucked it out.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Same thing. So that would be the worst case. Water, you know, and then, but if you get a Dorian, category 5 winds, nothing's going to, you know, survive that. So, and as you can see, Mexico Beach, I mean, there's still people putting videos out from that area that are just still haven't even come close to recovering yet. So wherever a system makes landfall, you're pretty much screwed, especially category 4 or 5.
Cat 5. You mean?
Yeah.
Out of there.
Well, you get a storm like Charlie was a Cat 4, but it was a smaller system, you know, and I don't think the surge had enough time to build on a fast moving system.
You know, Cat 4 would within 12 hours or something.
Yeah, it popped up quick, and so your effects sometimes on a smaller storm might not be, you know, as a larger storm, especially with the surge. I think these smaller storms they can't push the water like the bigger storms do. Katrina was a big storm. I mean, you know, all the focus was on New Orleans, but man, you know, Gulf Shores and all along Mobile and stuff. I mean, they still had huge water push from the system. You know, so water's everything. You know, that's the big story on these storms is the water surge.
Well, what's the you know, before I got one last question, but I gotta.
Oh, we got time. We keep rolling.
Okay, I got a friend, Professor James Douglas at FGCU. He sent me a question for you. I'm gonna try to spit it out. So be ready, okay?
Okay.
Because he's way smarter than I ever.
Well, this might be where I look stupid.
All right, we may edit this.
But I'm not afraid. You know, it's funny. You know, people expect me to be stupid. So.
yeah. What's that thing? Keep the bar low, man. You'll never disappoint them.
Yeah.
All right. So he's and I wrote this down. So get ready. Here we go. He said to ask you about the upwelling on the Southwest Florida continental shelf, how it's influenced by winds and the loop current, and whether there's any interaction between nutrients coming from the coast and nutrients brought up from the bottom waters by upwelling.
Well, the nutrients threw me for a loop. Now, which coast is he talking about? Our coast?
In Southwest Florida as well.
Okay. Well, okay. So the water in Florida isn't as deep as what, like on the East Coast.
Right.
Dorian. In fact, I was helping a friend of mine, this kid that in high school, and they were talking about the effects Dorian had on waters. And the sea anomalies chart showed such a massive cooling after Dorian, but the water on the East Coast is a lot deeper, and the water is very cold. So the loop eddy is a very fascinating discovery just not that many years ago. And Michael fed into the loop eddy. And the loop eddies are basically, I wish I could show a graphic, but it's part of the Gulf Stream, and you get a piece of it breaks off in the middle Gulf, and it's a circulating pool of warm water, and these hurricanes feed off of it, and it's an endless supply of warm water. And Katrina had one, Harvey had one, and Michael had one, and it definitely fuels the storms. The shelf waters, see, I think the loop eddy overrides the shelf waters on the Gulf side. We have a lot more warmer water because of all these loop eddies that get pulled up. So I don't think the shelf waters influence the Gulf systems as much as they do on the Atlantic side, especially like when we have storms come up under the Carolinas. Just the geography of the shelf, they don't get as much surge sometimes is because of the deep water going into shallower waters. So, you know, the Gulf's relatively flat, and my earpiece came out. So, but what was the nutrient thing again? Read that real quick.
Well, you know, he wrote, is there any interaction between nutrients coming from the coast and nutrients brought up from the bottom waters by upwelling?
That I haven't heard. I mean, that's way.
Nutrients is a big thing down here because of red tide.
Right now we had a lot of questions with red tide last year.
Yeah.
And the hurricanes didn't affect it at all. I mean, they people were hoping for a hurricane. I remember, you know, and it just bloomed again, right? Just the other day, it's in the news again.
Yeah. So we have in Southwest Florida. It seems to be pretty bad right now.
Yeah. So I don't think the storms affect any of that. I don't. You know, the more I'm reading about the red tides and stuff, a lot of it, I think it's homegrown with the runoffs in coastal impacts. The loop eddies in the Gulf, I don't think extend that far down deep into the Gulf to really pull any, bottom sea stuff. It's just basically the loop eddy is really just a warmer pool of circulating water that is spinning. It's like a little river, but I don't think it goes down that far down to pull up anything to pull nutrients into the coastline. I haven't heard that, so that's news.
Well, I'm going to connect you and Professor Douglas, so you guys can maybe hash it out sometime. So
that's great. I mean, I read a lot of message boards. I just never made that connection. I know that when we had a serious red tide last year, there was a lot of people hoping that, like Michael, and but none of it seemed to matter. Like it was all uncharted waters. I mean, people didn't know why, what's causing it, what the hurricane effects are going to be on it, and I think people are still trying to figure it out. Honestly, I don't think people really have any clue on how to stop it and what influence hurricanes have on it.
Yeah, him and I did a podcast about a year ago when that happened here. We had blue-green algae coming down from the river in Okeechobee.
Yes.
And it was meeting up with red tide, man. And it was just.
Oh, I've seen aerial shots and scary.
Yeah, it was crazy, man. And his podcast was awesome. We did, because he explained each one of them very simply where, someone like me or you, as you put it, could understand it. So it was really good stuff.
Yeah, it's just not my expertise. But it's fascinating. I might Google it tonight, and because I had a million red tide questions last year, and everybody was scratching their heads. I mean, even all the way from the top down. I have other friends in the weather world that I follow on Twitter and stuff, and everybody's just scratching their heads.
Yeah. Well, let's get this wrapped up. So I do want to know, is there anything else you want to talk about? Anything else you got?
What do I got?
We miss anything?
Well, I mean, the Facebook Live thing has become pretty cool. We start the show. I get people mad at me this week because I haven't done it because there's really no weather to talk about. So that's been a new addition, I think, to the site, is reaching people on Facebook. I love it because it notifies people. So that's really been a huge key, I think, to this going, the site growing, and met a lot of cool fans, with that. So
what's the future hold for you and this whole thing you're doing? Mike's weather page?
Nothing. I think, I just constant. I get people now, like I don't talk about like the other day, a lady said, I used to remember when you talked about South Carolina, and it hurt my feelings because I don't want to just focus on Florida, and I guess that's the one thing I'm trying not to do is I wish I could draw a line diagonally through the coast, U.S., Texas to maybe like Virginia, because that seems to be the coverage area for people along the coast and the Gulf. So I try to at least include everybody. I'm doing a lot more forecasts that show people, future maps and timing, and people like that a lot. So I just, trying to keep it real fun. I do a lot of Great American Teach-Ins, which is cool for the kids. So I'm trying to do that.
I don't know what that is.
Well, they do that up here with like a professional day or whatever. But people come in and talk to classes, or I actually spoke to the whole school one time about weather. But it's basically, your local professionals or people in the workplace come in and talk to kids about work. It is called a teach-in. You have doctors come in, airline pilots, and I've been asked to do weather. So last year I did almost a dozen or so of those, and it's been fun. So I'll do more of those.
Yeah. Do you ever do them remote? Would you like this?
I did one once. Yes, I saved it and I did it, filmed it on Facebook Live. So yeah, definitely. Yeah, I saved it and put it on YouTube.
Nice.
Yeah. So that's fun. I've done a lot of insurance adjuster conference, like CAT conferences that they do at the start of the season. They insurance adjusters are a big part of, I guess, my fan base. They travel a lot and do storm recovery. So I've been able to do some of those and met some great people talking about storms. And So that might be what's maybe the future. Do a little more speeching, talking outside of my little cubbyhole here.
Speeching. I love it, Mike. Well, hey, man, I appreciate it, Mike. Thank you for your time today. People connect with you on Facebook, right? Mike's Weather Page?
Yeah, Mike's Weather Page. That's simple. They can Google Mike's Weather Page and find the website, Spaghetti Models.
We'll put it in the post as well, all your links. Do you want them to connect anywhere else with you?
No, I'm on Twitter. I just don't. Twitter to me is different. I don't know. I haven't mastered Twitter. I mean, I got 20,000 people now, and I try to keep them happy, but it's not everything. Facebook, I'm 100% of the time on Facebook, and I'm unfortunately maybe 25% of the time on Twitter. So I'm trying to get a little better.
Facebook's your jam. I got you.
Yeah, and everybody, like we got cold front coming down this weekend, and Halloween tomorrow's going to rain, and doesn't look like we're going to be enjoying any cool weather in Florida for a while. That's what everybody wants to talk about right now.
Right. Well, Mike, again, man, I appreciate you. Thank you for all you do. Thank you for taking time out of your family time tonight to be with us. And I know from everyone in Southwest Florida and across the whole state and the coast, we appreciate you, man. We thank you very much for being on. I appreciate you.
Yeah, well, hey, I thank you, Tim, for having me and reaching maybe some new fans. And hopefully I don't offend anybody.
No, trust me. If they watch us at all, they seem worse than this. But you guys out there, if you are watching it, you want to connect, please feel free to like the Facebook page, subscribe to YouTube. If you're watching on audio, we have it on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, anywhere else you get audio podcasts. Connect with us. Be happy to help you anytime. I do mortgages in Florida. Quick shameless plug. If you're trying to buy a home or refinance your current mortgage, let me know. I'll be happy to help you. Call me anytime. I'll give you my cell, 239-910-5668. Thank you guys for watching. And Mike, thanks again, man. Appreciate you.
Yes, thank you, bud. Have a good night. Thanks.
Oh, you too. Good luck with the IPA, man. I hope you do. I'm going to buy some.
There you go.
All right, man. See ya.